صل على
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوات محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद।
उसने आशू मुझसे आशूर की का मंजर कहा, सीनाए शाह पर बिनते शाह हुदा, और शब्बीर कहते थे ये बारहा, हमको जाना है कल करने वादा वफा, तुम पार आएगा सब्र का मरहला। बात सारी सकीना ने शह की सुनी, और जवाबन वो बस इतना ये कहती रही, अच्छा बाबा सुलाने तो आओगे ना, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। बोले शब्बीर ऐ मेरे नूरे नजर, तुमको करना है अब शाम तक का सफर, तुमको कैदी बनाएगे अब अहले शहर। बोली शहजादी मुझको नहीं कोई डर, तुम कहो तुम सुलाने तो आओगे, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। शाह कहने लगे ऐ मेरी लाडली, तुम पाएगी अब शाम गम की घड़ी, आग दामन में होगी तुम्हारे लगी। बोली वो फिक्र मुझको नहीं है कोई, मेरा दामन बुझाने तो आओगे ना, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। मुस्तरिब दिल सहने लगे शाहिदी, तेरी किस्मत में बेटी सुको अब नहीं, अब तमाचे लगाएगा शिमरे लई। सुन के ये बात कहने लगी वो हजी, शिमर से बचाने तो आओ, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। फिर किया ने बेटी से कुछ यूं सोखन, अब हरम होंगे अब तो असीरे महन, तेरे हाथों में भी फिर बंदे रसन। बोली ये बात सुन के वो तिश्ना दहन, तुम गले से लगाने तो आओगे ना, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। रो के शब्बीर ने उसके बोसे लिए, बोले रुखसार होंगी जख्मी तेरे, तेरे रोने की शहजादी दिन आ गए। बोली तुम कैसे देखोगे रोते हुए, हाँ मुझे चुप कराने तो आओगे ना, रोज चेहरा दिखाने तो आओगी ना। लिख के सलमान दिल रो रहा है मेरा, जब शाह वाला ने रो कर कहा, अब तो जिंदान मरकद बनेगा था। बेटी साबिर की थी वो साबिरा, मेरा लाशा उठाने तो आओगे ना, रोज शहरा दिखाने तो आओगे ना। अच्छा बाबा सुलाने तो आओगे ना, रोज चेहरे दिखाने तो आओगे ना। सलवा
सलवात मोहम्मद वाल मोहम्मद। आज भी ज़ैनब की आती है सदा भाई हुसैन। आज भी ज़ैनब की आती है सदा भाई हुसैन। तेरा चेहरा तेरी आँखें भूल कब पाई हुसैन। चलते ना कैसे गिराया खुद को जलती रेत पर। चलना कैसे गिराया खुद को जलती रेत पर। घुटनियों के बल में तेरी लाश तक आई हुसैन। घुटनियों के बल में तेरी लाश तक आई हुसैन। बस में घबराई थी खंजर तुझ पे चलता देख कर। बस में घबराई थी खंजर तुझ पे चलता देख कर। फिर किसी मुश्किल में घिर कर मैं ना घबराई हुसैन। कौन था जो मरने वालों में नहीं था बरो। कौन था जो मरने वालों मैं नहीं था खूबरो। भूलने बैठी तो किस किस की ना याद आई हुसैन। बह रहे थे आँख से आंसू तेरी रुखसत के बाद। बह रहे थे आँख से आंसू तेरी रुखसत के बाद। फिर कोई आंसू का आँख पथराए हुसैन। हाथ में कुज़े लिए सब आसमां तकते रहे। हाथ में कुज़े लिए सब आसमां तकते रहे। अब्र ने एक बूंद पानी न बरसाई हुसैन। अब्र ने एक बूंद पानी की न बरसाई हुसैन। दूर उफ्तदा सर से लौट कर मैंने नवैद। दूर उफ्तदा सफर से लौट कर मैंने नवैद। ठंडा पानी जब पिया बस तेरी याद आई हुसैन। ठंडा पानी जब पिया बस तेरी याद आई हुसैन। आज भी ज़ैनब की आती है सदा भाई हुसैन। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद। I would like to invite Zakir Rizvi to recite his majlis for today. Salawat bar Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
For all of our, and in particular the marhumeen of the families who have helped us this Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في قرآن الكريم وهو أصدق القائلين قوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون؟ صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. Thank you for that. Perfect timing today as well, right? Today, I want to focus on the first key element that Imam Zayn al-Abidin used after his time in Karbala. We've spoken about the two key elements he used. One was knowledge, and the second was the relationship with Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalam. Today, I want to speak about knowledge, and which will be the final lecture, inshallah. We'll speak about our relationship with Ahlul Bayt. So, the Imam, the reason we say he used knowledge a lot is because of what he did with the slave market at his leadership at the time of his imamate. So after Karbala, like we mentioned yesterday, what the Imam used to do is he used to go and he used to buy slaves from the slave market, servants and maids. He would bring them home and he would keep them for about each. He wouldn't keep anyone for longer than a year. He'd keep them for a year each and then let them all go. And in that 1 year, he would teach them how to read, he would teach them how to write, he would teach them about Islam, he would teach them about Allah. And the Imam, he spent a lot of effort teaching these slaves, teaching them, helping them grow, helping them develop. Because the Imam knows the value of knowledge. The Imam knows how important knowledge is, and we've spoken about it a few times over the course of the series. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's asking, and it's a rhetorical question, which the answer is obvious to. So you don't need to actually say the answer out loud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's asking, is the one who has intelligence the same as the one who doesn't? Is the person who's intelligent the same as the one who's not intelligent, the same as the one who is? Of course not. But in general, in life, we see that those who are smarter, they tend to go further. Those who know how to think, who know how to see the world, who know how to understand things around them, they tend to go further in life. And again, I'm not talking about grades, because you guys will have friends around you. I've got plenty of friends around me as well who they get the best of grades, but they're also the dopiest people meet. They're not smart at all. They know how to read a book, they know how to remember what's in the book, and they know how to pass their exam. But that doesn't mean they're smart, because the way they see the world is just completely baffling. The way they see the world isn't a seeing the world. You guys will have it where you have friends who get the best grades, but you don't know how they've managed to last this many years without somehow dying or getting hit by a bus or something like that. And you'll all have friends like that in school. And if you don't, then it might just be you. But the important thing to remember is we're not talking about facts and figures. We're not talking about grades, school, no. When we talk about intelligence in Islam, we're talking about how you think. We're talking about how you see the world, how you understand information. In fact, the best, and this is genuinely the best description I've heard of intelligence. Intelligence is the ability to know two things and figure out a third thing from them. And it's important that we understand what this is. This is what you call logic. It's very simple. It's basically like maths, but you apply it to real life. And I can't remember if any of you guys have ever been in a majlis where I've explained this before. But it's an important thing to recognize, and you guys should all try and apply this in your lives, right? And it's so simple. It's super simple. This idea to think and thinking logically and rationally, it's super simple, right? The reason I say it's maths is because it literally is. A plus B equals C. That's the kind of formula we'll talk about here, right? What I'm talking about is I can know two facts. From those two things, I can figure out a third. I'll give you guys an example. Let's say, for example, if I say that everybody in this room is an Arsenal fan, right? If I say that, that's A. That's our first statement. Everybody in this room is an Arsenal fan. And then my statement, for instance, is... I'm trying to remember who's been here for the past few days. Okay, so my second statement is Ayan, an Arsenal fan. So if I say everybody in this room is an Arsenal fan and Ayan is not an Arsenal fan, what can you guys figure out? Does anybody have any ideas? What can you figure out from that? That's not true. So if we can think to be everything that I've said is true, right? Now what can you figure out? Everyone's an Arsenal fan. So consider that what I've said is true, right? Everybody in the room is an Arsenal fan. Ayan is not an Arsenal fan. What can you figure? No, because, well, go on. He's not in the room. Everybody in the room is an Arsenal fan, and Ayan is not an Arsenal fan. That means Ayan isn't in the room. Now, in the facts that I gave you, I didn't tell you Ayan wasn't in the room, right? But because of the two things you knew, you can figure out from that, Ayan's not in the room. So that's very simple logic. A plus B equals C. Everyone's an Arsenal fan. In the room is an Arsenal fan, plus Ayan's not an Arsenal fan must mean that Ayan's not in the room. That's simple logic. And when you start applying that to life, you start making much better decisions, and you also see the world in a whole new way. You start seeing the world and understanding it in a whole perspective. So when we talk about intelligence, and we're going to talk about it a lot today, that's what we're talking about. Knowing how to think, how to understand the world, how to see the world, how to recognize it, right? And that's a really basic example, but it really is that simple. We realize how important gaining knowledge is and how important being intelligent is, because we see that in life, those who are intelligent, they tend to get ahead. But here in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is the one who has intelligence the same as who doesn't, what we realize is that it's not just in the world you'll be more successful. It's not just you'll be better than other people because you're smarter than them. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He values you more when you live life with intelligence. He values you more when you make yourself an intelligent person. And the reason I'm saying it like that is because intelligence is big. The intelligence we're talking about, it's not the same as your memory, but even then you can train your memory. It's not the same as your exams, but even then you can get better at exams. Intelligence, it's much easier to get better at, but most people just don't try. Most people don't try and improve their intelligence, their understanding of the world. They use all their senses to try and figure out what's going on around them. In another place, we realize how important intelligence is. When one of our imams, and he says to him, "Ya Imam, if I've got 24 hours left to live, I've got 1 day left to live, what should I do with my time?" If it was me, I might have told him to go read namaz. One of you guys might have said, go read Quran, go read du'as, go ask to spend time with your family, give charity, all of these different answers, right? But the Imam, he doesn't say any of it. The Imam doesn't say to do any of those things. What does the Imam say to do? The Imam says, go learn something new. Go and study something. Go learn something. Ya Imam, if I've got 1 day left to, what am I going to do by learning something new? What is that knowledge going to do for me? How is that going to be in any way? It's not like in that day I have enough time to then pass that knowledge on to somebody else so that I can get thawab for it. It's not like that knowledge is going to make me 1 day. What am I going to do with learning on that last day? I've only got 1 day left to live. My time is so limited. And instead of namaz, Quran, fasting, spending time with my family, charity, instead of all of that, the Imam is to go learn something. Because the more you learn, the more you train your mind to understand information. The more you train your mind to understand information, the more you'll realize that everything in the world, it leads back to source. Everything in the world, it leads back to one place. And that is Allah wa ta'ala. That is the one true God who designed and created everything with such perfection. You see, the Imam didn't tell that man to study about Islam. He didn't say, if you have 1 day left, go learn about Allah. He didn't say, 1 day left, go learn about what the Prophet taught us. No, the Imam just said, go learn. If you're interested in biology, go learn about biology. You like cars, go learn about cars. You like planes, go planes. You like maths and science, go learn about maths and science. Whatever it is you like, go on that, but learn. In fact, when we talk about the things that are wajib on us as human beings, not just as human beings, there's a difference. Because the things that are wajib on us as Muslims, they all pretty much fold into 10 main things. And those are 10 things known as the furu'ad-din, the branches of religion. Fasting, going for Hajj once in your life, paying your zakat, giving your khums, doing jihad, amar bil ma'ruf, which is to encourage good, nahyan al-munkar, which is to discourage evil, and tawalla and tabarri, which is to love Bayt alayhim salam and their followers, and to reject all of those who are against the Ahlul. That's the 10 things that are wajib on Muslims. When we kind of fold everything into little categories, it all folds into those 10. But there's certain things wajib, not just on Muslims, but on all humans, on every single person. And one of those is to learn. And it's not just to learn, but in fact, it's to learn from the cradle to the grave. Sounds quite extreme, right? But we do start learning from the moment we're born. From the moment we're born, we begin learning how, because before we're born, all we know is the womb of our mother, stomach of our mother. That's all you know. And in there, darkness. You come into this world and now you're seeing colors. You're starting to recognize faces and people. First thing you recognize is who your parents are. You start recognizing what's safe and what's dangerous. Babies, you'll see that they're they're not quite danger, but they pick it up quite quickly. The things that are dangerous to them, they pick up quite quickly. This thing is dangerous because they're constantly learning. If any of you have younger siblings, when they're babies and when they're little, you'll notice everything you hand them in their mouth. Why? Because the strongest sense as a child, the strongest sense of the 5 senses that they have is the sense of taste. So they're trying to learn about it. How? By tasting it. The same way, especially with cats, if any of you have got a cat who comes to your house, you'll see your cat goes to them and it tries to smell them, it tries to sniff them. Why? Because that's the strongest sense for the cat. For a baby, the strongest sense is taste. So they're trying to learn about things by tasting them. Learning for them is in the same way as it is for us, where you might read a book or to a lesson. But that's not what learning is. That's one form of learning. The learning you do in school or the learning you do in madrasa or the learning you do here, that's one form of learning. Another form of learning, and possibly the most important, is just understanding the world around you, figuring out how things work, spending time just thinking about what goes on around you, how the world works, how you fit into it, learning as well. And in fact, we have in a hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he tells us that just 1 hour of reflection and thinking is better than a whole year's worth of other worship. Other worship meaning namaz and Quran and du'as, The Holy Prophet is telling us just 1 hour of thinking about the world and trying to understand and reflecting on who you are and how you fit into the world and learning about yourself better than a whole year's worth of worship. That tells us the level of importance that knowledge has. That tells us how much gaining knowledge matters, to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us it is wajib upon every human being to learn from the cradle to the grave. You don't just learn while you're in school. You don't just learn while you're in madrasa. You don't just learn when you're in majlis. You don't just learn in the mosque. No, you constantly learn. And you need to constantly try to learn. I've got a friend of mine, he's doing a PhD, right? And he's doing a PhD in gases that come out of the sun. It's really tough. It's like completely new research that's never been done before about basically how the sun works, right? And so I was on a flight with him and we were going to Tanzania in Africa. We were flying out there and about the work he does. And I was fascinated, right? I'll be honest, I don't know anything about space. I would struggle to name all the planets. I'll probably name all of them, but I'd have to think for a bit and try and remember them because I haven't looked at space or planets since I don't know how long ago, right? When I was in school, that's the last time I thought about space and the planets, really. So I don't know anything much about space. And we sat there and it was a long flight, I'll be honest with you. And for most of that flight, we literally just sat there and he was explaining the most basic stuff about it. And I kept asking him questions and the questions were super, super basic as well, right? They weren't super complex questions. I kept asking him. And at one point he stops and he turns to me and he goes, you know, nobody ever asks questions anymore. I was like, what do you mean? As we get older, people stop asking questions. Like the work he's doing, right? He knows for a fact that nobody understands the work he's doing because nobody's ever done it before. The research that he's doing is brand new. It's never been done before. And to me, like, people ask what I do and I'll tell them what I do because they've asked, right? He doesn't brag about it, but he's like, if they ask, I tell them what I do. And then they start pretending they know all about it already. And he was like, I'm sitting there thinking, I know you don't know about it because nobody knows about it. This is a whole new world that where nobody's explored this stuff before. But people, they like to pretend they know everything. And because they like to pretend they know everything, they never actually try to learn. And it happens more and more as you grow up. As you become an adult, for whatever reason, people stop asking questions. They start pretending they already know things. That's the biggest mistake we can make. To stop asking questions is one of the biggest mistakes we make. And in fact, we have in a hadith that half of knowledge is a good question. Half of all the knowledge you can get is all just in a good question. If you ask a good question, the answer will do so much. But if you never ask, then you'll never know. If you never ask, then you'll never find out. And in another place, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he invites us to ask him questions. He says it very famously, Saluni, Saluni, qablan tafqiduni. Ask me before you lose me. And when the Imam says, ask me before you lose me, what he's really talking about is before you lose the opportunity to learn, before you opportunity to get your questions answered, ask them now. Fortunately, when the Imam asked that, people came to him and they asked questions like, how many hairs are on my head? They came to the Imam and they asked him questions like, how many grains of sand are in the desert? And the Imam, he sat there and he's like, I could tell you all the secrets of the world. I could tell you all the secrets of the heavens and the earth and the skies and the seas and the oceans. And I could tell you everything. And you want to know how hairs are on your head, right? For most of us with our dads, we could count it with our own fingers, right? But the Imam, he's looking at this guy and he's thinking, why are you wasting your questions? You've got a good chance here to learn, but you're wasting the opportunity, your chance, which is why we're told half of knowledge is a good question. Now, there's no such thing as a stupid question, but the reason you're asking your questions should be good in order to try and learn something new. To learn concepts is so important in Islam and also in life. It's just a basic act. And we said it at the start, right? Those who are intelligent, they tend to go further in life. Intelligence comes from understanding how the world works. The more you know about the world, the more you'll be able to understand. So if you want to get ahead in life, have the best jobs, build the strongest businesses, be the most interesting people in the room, you've got to have intelligence. You've got to learning and keep growing. And the reason I say be the most interesting person in the room is because one a lot of people don't realize is, you know, the people who can have a conversation with anybody and everybody. And the reason they can talk to anybody is because they know different things. I met some guys in the first Ashra of Muharram, right? So 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3. I met these guys, they just come over from Pakistan, they've moved to the UK, and they don't really understand UK culture yet. Now speak at work, we can't speak to anybody because we have nothing in common with them. We have nothing to talk about. So I said to them, I was like, listen, the easiest way to fix that is start watching football or get into football. You do that and you'll be able to speak to about 90% of guys in this country. It's the easiest thing. But put it this way. If I were to put you into a room with the most influential person in the world right now, like let's say I put you into a room with Bill Gates right now, right? If you don't have anything to talk to him about, you're not going to come out of that conversation with anything useful. If you don't have anything to talk to him about, then you're not going to be able to get anything out of him. But if you know what you're talking about, know about things that he's interested in, and you have a certain interest in those things, if you can have a conversation, then you can do something with that. You might become friends, who knows? You might convince him to give you a little bit of money or a lot, who knows? But if you don't have anything about, then you're both going to sit there silently and walk out of that room without any opportunity. And genuinely in life, I'll be honest, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. There's a lot of truth to that. The better your contacts are, the more strong your network is, the more opportunities and chances you'll get. But if you don't know about the world and you don't know about different things and different topics, you're not going to be able to build that network because you're not going to speak to people because you won't have anything to speak to them about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sets up for success in this life and the next. He tells us, go learn. And He doesn't limit what we're meant to learn about. He just says, go learn, keep learning, constantly learn as much as you can. And when you do, the inevitable truth is, if you follow that right to the end, if you follow that knowledge right to its final point, you'll find that everything leads back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything leads back to the created every single thing that we can try to learn about. So to constantly learn and constantly gain knowledge, as was the mission of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, is a duty upon us. Recite ala salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Recite one all together. We've got to keep learning, keep growing, keep developing ourselves. But you learn, especially in this day and age, there's certain dangers as well. There's certain dangers with what we learn, how we learn. And I'm not saying that we limit what we learn, but the first thing I'll mention is we have to be ready for what we're learning. You can't jump to the highest levels of knowledge going through all the steps that lead to it, right? So for instance, that flight that I was talking about where me and my friend were talking about space and whatnot, telling me about all the intricate details of the research he does, all the little details about the work he does. I wouldn't understand any of it. I would be completely lost because I don't know the basics first. You have to fix and work your way up to the higher levels of knowledge. Because if you don't, then you can find yourself getting lost very easily, and not just getting lost in the meaning that you don't understand what's being said, but you can take away the wrong impression from a lot of knowledge if you don't have the prerequisites. Prerequisites are the things that come first, the things that you need in order to do something. If you don't have that foundation built, then you can't reach the top. You'll never ever see a house built from the roof down. It's just not possible. Whenever you build a house, you have to build from the ground up. And in the same way, if you try and learn the most advanced things first without going through the basics, it's trying to build a house from the roof down. You'll build the roof and it'll just fall to the ground and collapse because there's nothing holding it up. You have to set those foundations, right? And it's really easy nowadays because there's so much information out there. It's really easy to see information and have it completely spin you to the point where you actually take the wrong things from that information. I remember when I was 16, when I was starting my A-levels, I said to my dad, Dad, I want to study philosophy. And my dad was like, study philosophy is really good. And he asked me, what parts of philosophy will you be learning? And I told him we were doing epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, which is like, who's the oldest in the room here right now? Sajjad, is it you? No, it's not you. It might be Asad. That's you? 16. Is anybody older than 16? I wouldn't advise anybody here studies epistemology until you're at least 16, 17, because basically epistemology is the study of whether anything is real or not. And there's no answer, right? Like, people don't know whether things are real or not. They can't definitively tell you that everything's real or whether or not you're just a brain in a jar. This is all part of your imagination. That's what epistemology is. I told him that's the first thing I'll be learning. And he looked a bit iffy. He was like, okay, what else? And I said, and we're going to be learning about ethics. What things are good and what things are bad, what things are allowed, what things aren't. Why are good things good? Why are bad things bad? My dad was like, yeah, that's good. Go ahead. 100%. I want you to learn that. That's a good thing. And then I told him, and then we're going to be learning about philosophy of religion and philosophy of God, whether God exists or not. And that's when my dad went, I don't know about that. And I thought to myself, like, why would my dad not want me to learn about that? Surely that's the most important thing to learn about. Does God exist? As a Muslim, that should be the first thing I want to learn about. And my dad was like, learn it, 100%. I want you to learn it. But make sure that alongside your teacher, you have somebody who trusts and somebody who understands you, who can explain things to you. Why? Because, put it this way, when you study A-level philosophy, in this country especially, the way logic and rationale works, it is much, much, much easier, like 100 times easier to write an essay that says God doesn't exist than it is to write an essay that says God does. And I'll explain to you why. If I prove that God does exist, I have to go through every argument that people have that says God doesn't exist and prove that they're all wrong. If I want to prove that God doesn't exist, I literally just have to find one and go, this is right. So it's a lot easier to say that God doesn't exist than to say that God does exist when it comes to writing an essay, when it comes to logic in that manner, not even logic, purely just to writing an essay. It's a lot easier to say he doesn't exist than he does. And so that's how you're taught. So for 2 years, I was basically being taught God doesn't exist. I was basically being taught for this reason and this reason and this reason, God doesn't exist. And that's the point which my dad realized. He knew that could spin me. That could completely change the way I see the world. That could leave me not being a Muslim, not believing in God at all. But luckily for me, I had good teachers around. Not my school teachers. They were good as well, but they were good at teaching the subject. I had good teachers of religion and Islam around me as well. So whenever the teachers would come to me and they would, or not to me, but they would teach the lesson and they would say, for these reasons, people say God doesn't exist. In my head, I already knew, okay, but this is the response to that. I already knew in my head, oh, but that doesn't make sense because of this and this and I already knew the answers. But just think about it. If I didn't have religious teachers and all I had was teachers for 2 years telling me that God doesn't exist, if I didn't equip myself with the right foundations and the right basis support, I would have walked out of A-level philosophy not believing in God at all. Believe there is no God and that he doesn't exist. But when you equip yourself with the right knowledge, you have the right foundations, the right basis and the right support around you, yourself ready to go for those higher levels of knowledge without the risk of it sending you in the wrong direction, without the risk of it teaching you the exact opposite of what you're meant to learn. It's the same way with reading a map. When you're reading a map, you're looking at all the same information. It's all right there. But if you're looking at that map upside down, you're not going to reach your destination. If you're looking at that map upside down, you're going to get further and further away. If you don't have the right knowledge, have the right structure before you start learning those higher levels of knowledge, you're going to find you very quickly end up in a position where you're getting further away as opposed to closer to where you want to get. And where we want to get is closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a connection with our Lord. So one thing and one danger that we have to look out for when it comes to knowledge is that we don't try and jump ahead of where we are. Go through the stages of knowledge and follow through the steps of knowledge. The second danger, and this to me is a very dangerous one as well. I'm going to go 3 in total. The second one is that with all the knowledge available to us, right now, all of the knowledge we have available to us right at our fingertips, on our phones immediately, right? There's so much knowledge out there. We need to know how to be able to figure out what's right and what's wrong. Which of the knowledge that we see online is correct and which of it is because online there's no filter for right and wrong. You can't go into Google and type in that you only want facts because there's no way to set that apart online. There's no way to set on Google you want true articles and true information. Whatever articles are out there, whatever information's out there, Google's going to give you that. and you've got to figure out which of these is true, which of these is right, which of these is wrong. The second big danger that we're talking about here is knowing the right information from the wrong information. I'll give the example of the map again. This time, I've got the map the right way up. I'm reading it and I know how to read maps. Great, I should reach my destination, right? But if the map is wrong, then I'm not going to get to where I need to get to. If the map tells me that where I want to get is like right here and I'm here, but in reality, where I want to go is over here, the map is wrong, the information I got is wrong. I had the structure and the knowledge beforehand that I needed, which was understanding how to read the map. I set myself up properly by the right way up this time, but the map was wrong. I need to be able to know the information I'm seeing online, is it right, is it wrong? Does it make sense, does it not? And we have to be able to decipher that. And this is on to the third big danger and the final one that we'll mention. The third big danger is that with all of the information online, a lot of us will find ourselves listening to podcasts or like other people's perspectives. And that's a good thing. You should know other people's perspectives. You should understand other people's perspectives. But the danger is when all you do is listen to what other people think, when all you do is listen to other people's perspectives, you'll very quickly realize you forget how to make your own. It's very easy to forget how to make your own perspectives and to make your own opinions. And it's the same with any muscle. If you don't use it, it's going to wither away. Last year, I had an operation on my ankle. And so for a few months, I wasn't able to walk on this leg. And I remember there was a point where after those few months, I'd had my operation, I'd been on bed rest, I'd been on crutches, I hadn't used this leg in, I think it was about 2 months. I hadn't put any pressure on this leg. This foot hadn't touched the floor. I remember I was in bed and I put my legs out and I looked at them. And this leg was so much bigger than this leg. This leg was like this thin. And this leg was like this fat. And I was looking, I was like, what on earth has happened here? So the next time I had regular checkups with the doctor, right? I went to the doctor, I was like, I don't know what's happened, but my legs got smaller somehow. And the doctor looked at me and she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, look, it's so much thinner. And she's like, because you haven't used any of these muscles in 2 months. Of course it's going to get thinner because those muscles are wasted away. You have to muscles now. You have to get those back to where they were by using this leg again. But for as long as I wasn't using it, the muscles were wasting away and my leg was getting thinner and thinner. Another example I remember from my own childhood, I remember realizing this quite early on actually. I used to read a lot of books, like fiction books, right? And I love reading fiction books. I really enjoyed reading fiction books. I'd read them all the time, right? And my go-to was Harry Potter. I loved Harry Potter when I was a kid. I read all the books and I read them all a few times as well, each. I had the collection. I used to always read them, loved them. And I started watching the movies. And there was a very quick difference that I noticed. When I'm reading the books, I have to imagine for myself what Hogwarts looks like. I have to imagine for myself what Harry, Ron, and Hermione. I have to imagine for myself what, like, all the different things in Harry Potter look like. I have to figure out what Buckbeak looks like. I have to figure out what Arrow looks like. I have to figure it all out myself. I have to imagine it in my mind. So in my head, I have to design this whole world based on what the writing in the book tells me. When I watch the movies, I don't have to do that. I can see what Hogwarts looks like. I can see what Harry, Ron, and Hermione look like. I can see what Buckbeak looks like. I can see what this whole world of Harry Potter looks like. I don't have to imagine it. And I realized when I went from reading books to watching movies, my imagination became weaker. I was less able to imagine things. Why? Because I wasn't imagining things anymore. I was seeing them on the TV. So my imagination, it got weaker. The less you use any of your skills and talents and abilities, the quicker you'll lose them entirely. Using them is the key to maintaining them. Like, for instance, with football, right? And I use the example a lot. Me, when I had my injury, when I came back from injury, I was so rusty for the first few months that I was playing. Like, I'd go to pass it to us and the ball would end up over here with Ali Raza. Like, it just wasn't working. And alhamdulillah, I've always been very good at football, right? So I wasn't used to it. In my head, I was like, I've always just been able to do this so naturally, and all of a sudden I can't. Why? Because my injury, I wasn't able to play football for about just under a year, right? So for that time, I had no practice. And when I came back, I was super rusty. And forgive me, professional footballers, in COVID times, when we had lockdown, football stopped. And I remember the first game that happened, the first professional football game that happened when we restarted was a Bundesliga game between, I think it was Schalke and Dortmund. And that was possibly the worst game of football I've ever watched. They couldn't string two passes together. These are professional footballers. But because they were out of practice, because they hadn't had that match fitness and that match practice, they lost the ability. They had to work hard to regain it again. When you're constantly listening to other people's perspectives, what other people think and other people's opinions without stopping to figure out for yourself, I think about this. What's my understanding of this? What's my opinion on this? You'll realize you lose the ability to think for yourself. You've got to keep training yourself in how to think by thinking. It's super simple and it makes sense. We just have to make sure we're doing it. When it comes to knowledge, it was one of the greatest tools that our fourth Imam had after Karbala. And he used it, and he used it a lot. He didn't just use his own knowledge, but he educated the people. He showed everyone that education, knowledge, understanding the way the world works, tuning your ability to think and recognizing the world, it is the most important tool you have. It's an incredible thing you have, and it will take you very far in the world. And when you do that, you set yourself for success in this life and the next. Recite aloud, Salawat Allah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, throughout his journey after Karbala, he tells us again and again, often, about everything that he was doing and why he was doing it and how he was doing it. But when people come to ask questions of the Imam, a lot of the time you'll find they keep asking about the same thing. They keep asking about his pain. They keep asking about what hurts him. When they come to the Imam, they say to him, Ya Imam, through everything that happened, what hurt you the most? Imam Zayn al-Abidin, very famously, he replies, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Sham. The city of Sham hurt me the most. It hurt me more than anything else. Sham is the city where first the Ahlul Bayt made through the streets in Sham, then they were taken to the palace of Yazid in Sham, and finally they were held in prison in Sham. The city of Sham in Syria is a very painful city. Even today, if we go to Sham, and I was lucky enough, alhamdulillah, last year to be able to go, you can feel as you enter the city, there is a pain, and the closer you get to the Haram of Bibi Zainab, you can feel this grief that hangs in the air in Sham. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, very famously, he said 3 times, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. That was the most painful thing for me. But when they asked him even more, they said, tell us, what was it about Sham that hurt you so much? What was it about Sham that caused you pain? The Imam, he responds 2 things. He says the first was the chadar of my auntie Zainab, seeing her being paraded through the streets of Sham without her proper hijab. He says the second thing was the questions of my baby sister Sakina. What were those questions? Bibi Sakina in that prison of Sham, she used to spend a lot of time looking out to the sky. And when she did, she would see every morning the birds flying out. She would turn to Sayyid al-Sajjad and she would ask him, Brother Sajjad, tell me, where are the birds going? And Sayyid al-Sajjad, he would tell her, Sakina, the birds, they are flying out to get food for their families. My heart goes out to Sayyidah Zainab, who would sit there and listen to Sakina ask about those birds going to get food for their families. Why do I remember Sayyidah Zainab specifically here? Because we are told that Sayyidah Zainab, throughout her time in the prison of Sham, she would skip meals and skip having food herself because there was not enough food for all the children to have, for all the women to have. So Sayyidah Zainab would go hungry so that everybody else could eat. Sayyidah Zainab must have thought in her heart, if only I, like those birds, birds could go and get food, I would bring it and I would feed the women and the children. I would give Sayyid al-Sajjad his food and I would be able to eat myself as well. But Sayyidah Sakina, the daughter of Imam Hussein, the light of his life, she asks another question as well. The same evening when she birds flying overhead again, she turns to her brother Sayyid al-Sajjad and she looks at her big brother asking the question, tell me, where are the birds going now? Now Bibi Sakina, the response she receives, it hurts her heart so very high because Sajjad looks at her and he says, Sakina, these birds are on their way home. In the daytime they went to get food. Now they are returning home to their families. Bibi Sakina looks up at Sayyid al-Sajjad and she, my brother Sajjad, when will Sakina get to go home? The way the birds go home every night, when will my turn come? You see, Bibi Sakina, she wanted very badly to go home. The whole time, all she wanted, all she craved, all she would ask for is to return home to Medina. We see this most when, on the night of Sham Ghariba, there is a moment where a man sees the fire in Bibi Sakina's. He wishes to help her put it out, so he goes after her to help her put it out. Bibi Sakina, she sees him rushing towards her. She becomes scared and afraid, so she begins to run away. The man chases after her. As he catches her, he helps her put the fire out. So Bibi Sakina thinks, maybe this is a good man. Maybe he is here to help me. Maybe he is here to be kind. So she turns to the man and asks him, is there something you can do for me? Will you do one thing? The man asks her, tell me, what do you want? Bibi Sakina says to the man, if you can, will you take me to Najaf? At least if I can get to my grandfather Ali's grave, he will send me back to my home. She says, will you get me at least to Najaf if you can't get me Medina? Bibi Sakina wanted to go home so badly here in the prison of Sham. She asked Sayyid al-Sajjad, tell me, when will Sakina go home? Sajjad, how can he tell Sakina, my sister, today you are in the prison of Sham. The day will come where your brother Sajjad will go home. Your mother Rabab will go home. Your Zainab will go home. Your Muhammad Baqir will go home. Your auntie Zinet, your mother Layla, your auntie Farwa, they will all return home. But Sakina, for you now till eternity, home was dog sell in the city of Sham. How does Sajjad tell his Sakina, Sakina, there is no home for you, no return to Medina for you. Bibi Sakina, she constantly used to ask her brother, tell me, when will Sakina get to go home? I want us to remember today that baby girl buried in the prison of Sham, Sakina, the daughter of Hussein, the light of my Mawla's eyes. Bibi Sakina, it is said that she used to cry a lot after Karbala. People imagine when they say this that Bibi Sakina used to wail and she used to weep out loud. She used to cry out loud, but there was one in the journey, in the Maqatil, that told me this wasn't the case. Bibi Sakina, she didn't used to scream and cry and wail. No. What was the moment that told me she didn't do this? There is a time in the palace of Yazid where Yazid points to Bibi Sakina and he says to her, tell me, what is your name? Who are you? Bibi Sakina, she looks up at him. She goes to say her name. She goes to tell him, my name is Sakina bint Hussein. I am the daughter of Hussein. She lips, but no sound comes out. She tries again. She moves her lips to tell him, I am Sakina bint Hussein, but no sound comes out. Again, she does it a third time. The third time when there is no sound, instead of trying to who she is, Sakina does one thing. With her little hands, she simply points to the rope in her neck. She pulls at it and tugs at it. As the soldiers step forward, they untie the rope, they loosen the chains from her Sakina's neck. In a croaked voice, she whispers, I am Sakina, the daughter of Hussein. When she was asked, why did you not just say that first? She told the people in that palace of Yazid, I was willing to speak, but the rope was tied so tightly around my neck that my vocal cords, my voice would not come out. Sakina, from Karbala to Kufa, Kufa to Sham, had the rope tied so tightly around her neck, it damaged her voice forever. But Sakina, although she didn't weep and wail, smile. Although when she cried quietly. Although when she shed tears, she shed them in silence. There does come a moment where Sakina raises her voice. When was that? One night in the prison of Sham, Sakina wakes up from her sleep. She goes rushing from corner to corner in that cell, from side to side amongst the women, looking around the children, rushing to her brother Sajjad to Zainab, from Zainab to Farwa to Layla to Rabab, running around the whole time. Her voice raised, scream, where has he gone? Where did he go? Has he left me again? Auntie Zainab, she takes Sakina in her arms. She holds her down. Sakina restless. She will not stop trying to run around the cell. Her aunt holds her tight. She restrains her. She says, Sakina, tell me, who are you looking for? Where has who gone? Who are you asking about? Sakina looks at her auntie Zainab. She says, my father said, I just saw my dad. He was right here. He told me he's coming to get me. Sakina looks at her auntie Zainab. She looks at her. She says, my dad told me he will finally take me home. Tell me, did he come and leave me here again? Has he left me alone in this dark prison cell again? Bibi Zainab tries to explain to her, Sakina, your father was never here. What you saw was a dream. But Sakina won't calm down. The noise reaches the palace of Yazid. As the noise echoes through those cells, the women begin to cry. Sakina is screaming. Yazid is awoke from his sleep in his palace. He asks one of his guards, what is this noise? The guard tells him, Sakina, the daughter of Hussein, she misses her father very much. Yazid turns hard and he says, very well, give the girl what she wants. If she wants Hussein, then send Hussein to her. The head of Imam Hussein is prepared on a platter, decorated with a cloth raised over it. They take the tray, they take it and place it in front of Bibi Sakina. Bibi Sakina, she sees this banqueting tray with a cloth over it. She looks at the guard and she says, I don't want your food. I don't want what you have brought. The guard laughs at her. He says, trust me, what I have brought you, you want this very much. Raise the cloth. Look what I have brought you. Bibi Sakina lifts the cloth from on top of the tray. What does she see in that prison of Sham? All the women and children in a circle. Sakina in the middle. As she raises the cloth, everybody watches on as the head of Hussein looks at his Sakina. Hussein's eyes set on his daughter. Sakina's eyes set on her father. Sakina looks at her father's head. She picks it up and takes it in her arms. She holds Imam Hussein's head close to her chest. Now her screaming dies down. She goes quiet. The women's tears, the women's crying, it starts to die down as well, until the moment where Sakina falls completely silent in that Sham. Now there is a scary hush in the prison. The cell is perfectly silent. The women are all in this circle. Sakina in the middle, watching her as this child has gone completely silent, almost limp, collapsed over her father's head. Bibi Zainab turns to Sayyid al-Sajjad. She says, Sajjad, go. It looks as though Sakina has fallen asleep. Go check on Sakina. Imam Zainul Abidin, he steps forward. He kneels down next to Sakina. He checks on his little sister as he checks on her. The Imam turns to his auntie Zainab. He looks at her and in a quiet voice, king and whispered, he whispers the words, Auntie Zainab, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. My auntie Zainab, indeed we are from Allah. To Allah we will return. My auntie Zainab, my baby sister Kina, she has returned to Allah. She has gone back to her Lord. They say, The women and children erupted into tears. The screams reached echoes all over Sham. The entire city knows something is going on in that prison of Sham, but they do not know what has happened. What is happening in the prison? In one room, the body of Sakina lays lifeless. A woman has been sent to do ghusl and kafan for Bibi Sakina. In another room, parts of the cell, Sayyidul Sajjad, with the chains and the cuffs around his hand, is smacking at the ground, trying to break the ground, digging away with his hands, trying to dig a small grave for his baby sister. But as he does, the woman who came to give ghusl to Sakina, she comes rushing in, screaming, crying as much as she can. She screams as she walks in, crying, what did they do to this young girl? What monsters were they that attacked her? Sayyidul Sajjad goes with the woman to the room where Sakina's body lay to see what it is seen. He knows his sister was in pain. He knows they hit her with lashes. He knows they had her in chains and handcuffs. He knows the rope was choking her neck, but he wishes to see what made her this way. It was not normal. It was not normal the way she erupted in tears. So he goes to see. The woman peels back a part of the kurta of Bibi Sakina, part of her dress. As she peels it back, says Sayyidul Sajjad, and she says, what beasts were those people who have sewn threads into the body of this young girl? He looks at the woman. He says, nobody sewed any threads into the body of Sina. But on the night of Sham Ghariba, when Zakina's dress caught fire, the dress burnt into her skin. From then till now, my baby sister has been living with the pain of the threads in the skin of Sakina. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We raise our hands in dua and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, for all those mu'mineen around the world struggling with ill health, grant them complete shifa. Oh Allah, for all those mu'mineen who have left this world, in particular the marhumeen of all those present, raise their ranks in Jannah. Oh Allah, accept all our ibadat in these holy months of Muharram and Safar. Oh Allah, in the reappearance of the Imam of our time, and allow us to enter Jannah and Bana. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع الدعاء موت حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ, असगर बिन तेरे कहाँ से पाऊँ, असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। आ लौट के आजा लाल तेरे जीर के नाज उठाऊँ, असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ, असगर बिन तेरे कहाँ से पाऊँ। मेरी आँख का तारा है तू, मुझको जान से प्यारा है, बाद की यारी के जीने का तू ही लाल सहारा है। तुझे छोड़ के तन मक्तल में मैं कैसे शाम को जाऊँ, से पाऊँ, असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊं। लौट के आ जा लाल तेरे जी भर के नाज उठाऊं। असगर बिन तेरे तेरी वो मासूम आन तेरी याद दिलाती है। तेरी प्यार की वो सब बातें मुझको बहुत रुलाती है। मैं तेरी जुदाई में बेटा रो के मर ना जाऊँ। बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। हर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। लोरियों वाले ये तो तेरे नाज उठाने के दिन थे। आंखों में तेरी खुशियों के ख्वाब सने के दिन थे। लौट के असगर आ बेटा तेरा कोई मैं बदलाऊं। असगर बिन तेरे असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊं। लौट के आ लाल तेरे जी भर के नाज उठाऊं। असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊं। असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊं। बोल नहीं सकती माँ असगर क्या से हो तेरे बेटा। खाली गोद और जिना है आजा माँ के पास आजा। नन्हे मुजाहिद मैं तेरी अशकों से प्यास पाऊँ। मैं कहाँ से पाऊँ। असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। लौट के आ जा लाल तेरे भर के नाज उठाऊँ। असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। असगर बिन तेरे मैं चैन कहाँ से पाऊँ। فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسي المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأوائل التي هلت بفنائك. عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله لحظ مني لسرالتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن حسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب خصوصا سيدي ومولاي يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين وأختك زينب وأم كلثوم وبنتك سكينة جميع أحمد الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن حسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الأخير. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر القاسم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الوفا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة ابن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. أجل سهورك أجل سهورك يا ابن الحسن يا ابن الحسن. أجل سهورك أجل سهورك. السلام عليك جميع رحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك حجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة في كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك دوا وتكونه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.